The borrowed time. It had rained since morning, and by evening, London looked as if it had been washed to bare stone. On the narrow lane where Oliver Hayes's antique shop stood, lamplights blurred into amber patches in the puddles. Through the thick glass of the display window, dark silhouettes of cabinets could be seen, mirrors and tarnished frames, and delicate porcelain angels. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and polished wood. Oliver, in a thin wool vest, was finishing the inventory of new arrivals. His fingers traced the lines automatically, but his thoughts kept returning to the winter 2 years before when he had missed a train and failed to say goodbye to his mother. Since then, the word time cut into his ear like a blade. The doorbell quivered. On the threshold stood an elderly woman in a long dark coat and black gloves. Her umbrella glistened with rain, yet not a drop touched her face, as though she had walked beneath a roof unseen. She placed a small bundle wrapped in faded cloth on the counter. "This is for you, Mr. Hayes," she said quietly. "Remember 2 rules. 3 turns back always have a price, and the debt seeks the family." Oliver frowned, but she had already unwrapped the cloth. On an old velvet cushion lay a pocket watch, gold-plated with the warm shade of copper. On the lead, interwoven arrows were engraved, and within their pattern, barely visible letters E.H. "I can't accept it without payment," he began. "Money has no meaning here," she replied, and without waiting for protest, headed for the door. When she was gone, Oliver wound the watch. The second hand moved backward, exactly 3 revolutions, and stopped. A light chill brushed his skin as if a window had been opened in the shop. With it came a strange feeling. If the mechanism could return even a moment, he was bound to test it, not for himself, but so no one else would miss a final farewell. He looked outside. The woman was gone. In the silence, the ticking was steady, but not of this world, as if it followed its own invisible logic. Morning in the shop began lazily. Pale winter light seeped through fogged windows as Oliver drank tea, trying not to think about the strange visitor. The watch lay in the display case, yet his gaze clung to it as if to something alive, waiting to be touched. The first customer was Mr. Callum Reed, a silver-haired architect who had been coming for years. Usually impeccable, today he gripped the counter like a railing. "I can't keep up," he exhaled. "The model must be ready by morning, and I've barely started." Oliver ran his fingers over the lid of the watch, feeling the engraved EH beneath his fingertips. He remembered his mother lying in the hospital room, and himself staring at the station clock, knowing he was too late forever. The thought pierced him, and he handed the watch to Callum. "They help." Callum smirked, but wound it. The second hand moved backward, 3 full revolutions. He flinched, glanced around as if someone had passed through him. "Strange. It's as if my shoulders feel lighter." Oliver watched him go, and noticed in the display window's reflection that the architect's shadow moved slightly faster than he did. A disturbing feeling stirred in his chest, not satisfaction, but unease, as if he had given away not an object, but part of someone's life. That evening, locking up, he turned on the radio. The news announced, "This morning, Maeve Reed, aged 96, one of Somerset's oldest residents, passed away." The surname struck his ear. Oliver opened an old family album and found her portrait among distant relatives on his mother's side. He sat in silence, listening to the steady ticking from the display. Each beat sounded like someone else's heart. Had he helped his friend, or simply shifted the cost onto someone who couldn't refuse? The question had no answer, but the cold in his chest remained. Within a week, the shop came alive as it hadn't since Christmas sales. The rumor about the magic watch spread strangely. People arrived as if they'd heard not from friends, but from some shared, invisible source. A young writer with dark circles under his eyes, stuck on the ending of a novel. He wound the watch, and that evening sent a letter. He had found an entire night's work. A 40-year-old woman with trembling hands. "My son is awaiting surgery. I want to be there." She returned radiant. A jeweler with overdue orders. A student with a dissertation deadline. A photojournalist needing an extra day to reach the front. All left with faces as if a weight had been lifted. One evening, sorting through a box of documents, Oliver found old records. Yellowed pages with neat columns marked added and taken. Some lines had no names, only dates. He lingered on them. If the debt was assigned to the nameless, perhaps the cost would fall on those already dead. He tested it. He lent the watch to a student, registering the debt in a nameless line. In the following days, there was no news of anyone's death. His heart eased. Perhaps he had found a way. The joy was short-lived. Flipping through the family album, he noticed his mother's face blurred, like a poorly developed photograph. Memory stubbornly refused to recall the color of her eyes. In its place was a void, cold and uneasy. That night, as he drifted to sleep, he heard ticking, but not from the display. The sound came from deeper in the house, steady and heavy, as though each tick of the second hand took not time, but something greater. He rose, went to the storeroom. Empty. Only the faint scent of ozone hung in the air, as if a discharge had passed nearby. Returning to bed, he understood. The debt hadn't vanished. It had only changed shape, waiting to return. While clearing a distant cabinet, Oliver noticed a false bottom. The wood was darkened, but the panel lifted easily, as if opened many times before. Beneath lay a small mahogany box with a worn brass clasp. Inside was a stack of thin notebooks tied with twine. The paper was yellowed, the ink blurred in places. On the covers were dates and names. The earliest entry was from 1826. Neat columns, name, age, added, and taken. The numbers always matched, hour for hour, day for day. At the very start was an entry for Elias Hayes. Beside it, time contract, price, balance. In the next line, child saved. Between the lines was a note. The debt must be balanced. For every hour gained, an hour given. In the margin of one notebook, in sharp handwriting, pay the debt with another's time. The phrase burned his eyes, reminding him of the nameless lines he had already used. In the middle of the stack, he found a page with an enigmatic diagram. The outline of a watch, a palm on the lid, the second hand moving backward. Note, the bearer pays. No explanation, but the meaning was clear. The mechanism could be turned against its owner. At the end of the last notebook was handwriting eerily like his own. Date, 6 years from now. Beside his name, the age column was blank, and in the taken column was a cross. At the bottom, conditional, if you take the false way out. The notebooks trembled in his hands. The display case clicked. The watch had wound itself. The second hand crept backward, slowly, as if savoring each stolen moment. That night, Oliver dreamed of a long corridor. Behind each door was someone from his bloodline. A child with a wooden toy, a woman with a shawl, a man in a work apron. With each turn of the hand, their images faded and vanished. He woke knowing. The watch took not only minutes, but the bridges between generations. And at the end of the list was already his own name. Morning brought the scent of wet stone and the ring of the doorbell. A tall man in a flawless gray suit entered, introducing himself as Sir Adrian Locke, a collector of rare artifacts and, as he said, a connoisseur of mechanisms that go beyond engineering. His gaze stopped on the watch in the display. "They shouldn't be here," he said quietly, without theatrics, but with certainty. "I offer a sum to clear all your debts. Not for me. My wife. She's in palliative care. Weeks, maybe days. This watch is her only chance to see another spring." Temptation and pity clenched in Oliver's chest. He saw in Locke's eyes not greed, but firm, desperate intent. Yet he also saw the way Locke held his hands, already winding the mechanism in his mind. "And if the price isn't only hers?" Oliver asked. "Time is too rare a resource to spend it on abstract descendants," Locke replied without hesitation. When he left, the shop seemed darker, though the sun still shone outside. Oliver noticed an unmarked envelope on the counter. The paper was damp, like after rain. The handwriting was his own. Date in the corner, 10 years ahead. Inside, a few lines. "You will break the chain, or we will cease to exist. I've seen how it ends." Below, signature, O.H. It was no joke. Now the choice stood before him. Give the watch to Locke, save one life at the cost of all yet unborn, or destroy it, cutting off the chance for another's happiness. Two voices fought in his chest, one that remembered the cold of loss, and one that saw the emptiness in the family records. Outside, snow turned to rain. The watch in the display moved backward, hurrying to finish what it had begun. Snow outside fell in sparse flakes, as if the air had grown heavier. The shop was silent, only the ticking of the display watch growing louder, with a low, almost heartbeat rhythm. Oliver sat at the counter, staring at it, sensing that little time remained, not in the day, but in his life. He remembered the envelope with his signature and the notebook page with the cross beside his name. His hands trembled as he took the watch. On the lid, the letters E.H. gleamed faintly. He placed his palm over the engraving, as in the diagram from the old records, and slowly wound the mechanism. The second hand moved backward, and with each turn something in his memory dimmed. First went the scent of his mother's mint lotion. Then her voice grew muffled, as if heard from another room. When he realized he could no longer recall the color of her eyes, his hand pulled away on its own. Breathing heavily, he understood. Any method, even on oneself, was exploitation. The mechanism always took a price, and what it took could not be returned. Oliver stood, went to the workshop, and came back with a heavy hammer. He placed the watch on a wooden block. His heart beat in time with the mechanism. For a moment, it seemed the sound was pleading, request and threat in one rhythm. "It's over," he said, and struck. The glass shattered, but the hands kept moving. The second blow drove the case into the wood, releasing a sharp smell of ozone. The third, and all fell silent. The silence was so dense he could hear his own breathing. The wall clock, which had lagged for weeks, now ran true. Outside, snow turned to gentle rain. Oliver gathered the fragments into a metal box and locked it with 3 locks. He knew the lost memory would not return, but the temptation was gone with the watch. And for the first time in a long while, the seconds moved as they should. A week passed. The shop lived again in its measured rhythm. Morning light fell on the displays, catching glints from porcelain figurines and glass flasks. Occasional customers came, for an old book, for a copper candle holder. Everything looked as before, but the silence inside was different. No longer tense, but calm. In the place where the pocket watch once lay, now stood a simple hourglass. No gilding, no engraving, only clear glass and a thin stream of golden sand. Each morning he turned it over, watching the grains flow evenly. Unlike the old mechanism, this device could not be cheated. The sand fell as it should, and nothing could return what had passed. Oliver no longer brought into the shop objects with histories that could not be verified. Only what he could call safe went onto the shelves. He even burned old client letters, unwilling to keep threads leading to the past. Sometimes he tried to recall his mother's face, but only a vague oval remained in memory, like an old photograph blurred by rain. This was his price, and he accepted it without trying to reclaim what was lost. On rare evenings, when the city slept under soft rain, Oliver sat in his chair by the window and listened to the wall clock. Its ticking was a reminder that each moment was unique, and that was its value. One day, passing the display, he caught the shadow of a woman in a dark coat at the edge of his vision. She stood behind his shoulder, as on the first day, but he did not turn. Time had returned to normal. It had become what it was meant to be, a limited gift. A gift that could never be borrowed and that always left a trace behind.